We are live. We are live. Welcome to College Football's Peek Around the Corner with your host, Greg Flugar. We cover everything in college football because we love everything in college football. And if you do as well, please subscribe to our channel, ring the notification bell, smash the like button, share the video if you want to support this independent national college football's rebel outpost with a donation to help us keep the lights on and grow the channel. Just hit that $ where you make your comment and I'll get to your super chat as quick as I possibly can. Welcome everybody into the studio that sits on the corner, the very corner of Keith Jackson Parkway and Kurt Gowdy Avenue. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to become a legend with your comments and with your phone calls. Thank you all for coming on in. We're going to do a quick roll call, and we'll talk about the Ross Dellinger kind of sort of breaking news. I don't want to get in the deep. We are going to report what he is reporting, but I don't want to get into the deep weeds on this, but I'd rather talk about the College Sports Commission. I think there may be a misinterpretation of what the College Sports Commission's role is in the current college sports landscape. And I'm going to talk about that. Take a couple of minutes discussing that. But then we're going to move on to the Irish Eyes Are Watching. We talked about that in a release episode this morning, episode 482. And then I want to get on to the story today. The Southeastern Conference cloak is starting to disappear when it comes to the timing of their next expansion. That is what we believe here at Peek Around the Corner. Look, I can't wait to get into this because this is one of those examples where you have chatter behind the curtain, and I'm talking chatter behind the curtain, not quite matching up what is being reported in public. And it hasn't been happening. There's been two different, what is being said behind the curtain, what I'm fortunate enough to be told and smart enough to listen to, versus what people discuss in public on their network shows, on their YouTube shows, on their podcasts, and in their articles. But I believe that one of those, I think the one that is being discussed in public, the narrative that's being discussed in public about the Southeastern Conference timing and all this, I think that narrative is going to change, while the true narrative, the chatter behind the curtain, that is going to emerge in front of all of you in due time. More and more evidence of this is popping up. And yeah, so we're going to talk about it. Southeastern Conference cloaking of the timing. They've been cloaking it. Let me push the envelope just a little bit more before we go into our roll call, and before we talk about the Irish Eyes Are Watching, before we get onto the CSC discussion. Let me just push the envelope a little bit more. You all know where PATC has been standing on this issue of the Southeastern Conference. We believe that the next transformation of the Southeastern Conference is going to be as big as when they expanded with Texas and Oklahoma. And that was a big bleeping deal. We have never believed that the Southeastern Conference was going to stand still. We have never believed that the Southeastern Conference was not going to expand until 2034, 2036. We don't even believe that the Southeastern Conference is going to wait to 2030, which seems to be the consensus in public. And we've also been very clear that we don't believe anything is imminent. We don't think anything is done. We don't think anything is settled. We don't think anything's signed, sealed, and delivered. I could be wrong. PATC, we could be wrong on that. Maybe there is some hot bubble of action going on. There's positioning, there's talking, but I mean real negotiations. I could be wrong on that. I don't think I am. I'm trying not to be wrong on that. We got the Colorado, we got the Pac-12, the Big 12, we got the USC, we got the Washington and Oregon. I'm going to do all I can not to have this one slip by me. We don't think anything's imminent. We're pretty sure there isn't. So, nothing imminent, but nothing way out in the future either. But And look, the PATC family, my friends, people, they see somebody take a shot at Greg Flugar somewhere. Greg doesn't know what he's talking about. Greg's an idiot. Greg's a whatever. And there was a person that sent me screenshots of on a website saying Greg Flugar, he's crazy if he thinks that North Carolina is going to make a decision on or before June 1st, 2027. Maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am crazy. Maybe I am. But you know how it is. If we're wrong on that, I'm going to come up here and take a big L. I'm not going to eat a cheeseburger again, but I'll take the big L. But I think there is more and more evidence percolated in public, and it's definitely happened in the chatter behind the curtain, that the SEC's timetable on this doesn't match what the reporters are saying in public. It just doesn't match. And it is starting to leak. I believe it is starting to leak. And we're going to go into that. We're going to get into that later in the program. Anyways, I want to thank you all. Let's do the roll call. Let's do the roll call here. Rod is in the house. Thanks for coming on in, Rod. Appreciate it. MBM, Go Poke, Skaven, yes. The Cornhusker, Adam is in the house. My prof. I made a live show while I'm alive. That's good news, my prof. Good news. CFB Plus is in the house. Eric Phipps. We got an LSU Tiger. Rodney Richborg. Grateful Trojan. Driving back from Vegas. 3-day volleyball tournament. Wow. I bet that was fun. Is in the house. Greg. Caleb Ramirez is here. Jay Price is here. The Almighty. The Incredible Edible. Oklahoma State Cowboy. Bill G. We got the Fight On. We got the Jose. We got the USC Trojan. He's all fired up. Edward, the Auburn Tiger. War Eagle is in the house. War Eagle. We got Stephen Vitt, the Ohio Bobcat. We got the Terrapin in the house. The Maryland Terrapin is here. Everybody duck for cover. Old Army, Gig'em. Gig'em is in the house. We got Derek is here. Rich Austin. Where are you, Rich Austin? Thanks for coming on in, Mr. Ute. I do appreciate it very much. Thank you, sir. We got Michael 19th C fan. Jago Blue. Jago Blue is feeling good. Jago Blue is feeling good. The Michigan Wolverines. National men's basketball champion. They're in the Final Four in the men's hockey. Holy smokes. Greensboro from North Carolina. The non-disclosure agreement could possibly keep any potential discussion with the BOG private. Yep. The NDAs are out there. You're not going to hear North Carolina say peep about it. You're not going to hear Newmark or Bubba Cunningham. You're not going to hear anybody say anything. Well, you shouldn't. You don't want. If you want your university to move to a different conference, you do not want your university talking about it in public. However, that's in public. What happens in private happens in private. And I try to find out what's happening in private like we did with the Colorado Big 12 meetings, and we try to present it to you without ruining the story, without getting in front of the story, without stepping on the toes of our sources, but be able to tell you something is happening in our own, hopefully informative, and entertaining manner. Thank you, Greensboro, for coming on in. I appreciate it. Daniel Gorby is in the house. Daniel Gorby is in the house. Who else is here? That's about it. That's about it. I might have missed somebody. I apologize if I did. We have got ourselves the first super chat of the day. Heartbreak 25 is leading the way. Heartbreak 25. Nice to see Heartbreak 25 in the house. You guys are killing me. Very early in the program, and you guys are already killing me. Heartbreak 25. Can you pick against me winning the next Powerball jackpot? I have the same odds of winning the Big Ten, sweeping football and basketball natties. Yeah, and we're going to get into that. I got a list of national titles that the Big Ten has put in their trophy case here in this current calendar academic athletic year, and it is quite historic. I don't think anyone, sure, we could say that the Big Ten was going to be doing better this year than last year because all the advantages that they have, but I don't think anyone would have predicted what the Big Ten has accomplished this year. Pretty amazing stuff. Heartbreak 25, you're going to win the next Powerball jackpot. It might not be for the whole kick and caboodle, but you're going to win something. You're going to win something on your next Powerball jackpot. Greg the Gold guarantees. Greg the Gold guarantees. I'm the opposite of that. What's that character on what's that character on WWE, the guy who can curse people? I'm the opposite of that. I tell you something good is going to happen. Well, I guess that is somewhat of a curse. Anyways, we'll drop that. Nikolai Volkov. Heartbreak 25. No! You're going to win Heartbreak 25. I guarantee it. I absolutely guarantee it. Every man a Wildcat. John Grove is in the house. Thank you for the $5 holler, Heartbreak 25. Very much appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much. Let's just get into the CSC real quick. People are still arriving. I really don't want to spend a whole lot of time John Grove just sent me something here. Hold on. Breaking news. Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports. Thank you, John Grove, and I think other people have sent it to me here in the last 10 minutes. Thank you guys so very much for keeping your head on a swivel. I very much appreciate it. Ross Dellinger. Breaking news. More than 30 university presidents from at least 6 FBS conferences held a call Monday yesterday with Senator Maria Cantwell and Eric Schmidt on addressing the revenue disparities among the FBS conferences. Sources tell Yahoo Sports. It is the latest conversation around consolidating media rights. My goodness. Cantwell and Schmidt have authored a bill to open the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961 in an effort to give conferences the option to pool media rights, something the SEC and the Big Ten do not support. No SEC president participated in Monday's call. That's not even a cloak. That might be a dagger, but it's not a cloak. Well, we'll get into the SEC later in this program. I promise you that. No SEC president participated in Monday's call. Big Ten had very few. Leagues represented on the call, mostly independent of their conference office, included the Big 12, a majority of presidents, the ACC, roughly half of them, the Big Ten as few as 2, and about 10 total from the Pac-12, the American, and the MAC. Sources tell Yahoo Sports. On the call, the senators sent a clear message. Legislation is unlikely to pass the U.S. Senate without addressing the growing revenue disparity among the conferences, whether through amending the SBA or another concept. It's over. It's all over. Is there a DEFCON 0? Is there such a thing as a DEFCON 0? Let me know in the chat room. Or is that hitting the nuclear? Is that hitting the button? Is that opening up the nuclear suitcase? Is that what just happened? Well, I'm glad we're talking about the SEC later in the program because that's pretty timely. Okay. Hold on a second. Let me readjust myself here. Well, this is a big deal, isn't it? Okay. Everybody calm down. On the call, the senators sent a clear message. Legislation is unlikely to pass the U.S. Senate, unlikely to get those 60 votes, without addressing the growing revenue disparity among the conferences, whether through amending the SBA or another concept. They described the issue as urgent and hope for a solution by summer. So by hook or crook, the revenue disparity among the conferences, it's got to close by legislation, by the hammer. This matter is as important as the revenue disparity, SBA, along with several other issues. Government oversight, employment, breadth of antitrust remain at the center of negotiations between Cantwell and Senator Ted Cruz over a potential bipartisan Senate bill. While the SCORE Act is a solid framework to a congressional bill, the senators believe that it does not address the revenue issues festering within college athletics, they told the presidents. Republican leaders continue to whip up votes for a potential vote this month on the score. So, man.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make it.
We're in trouble. So, for the SCORE Act to pass, the SCORE Act that most everybody in college sports is trying to push to try to get passed, and the Big Ten and the SEC have spent a lot of money, a lot of time, along with the Big 12, along with the ACC, and getting the SCORE Act passed. It's not going to pass unless the revenue disparity is solved. Either through the Sports Broadcasting Act or something else. So it sounds like the Sports Broadcasting Act making it optional is not enough. Are you getting that? Are you getting that impression? It sounds like the sports broadcast, the SBA of 1961 being optional, having the ability of conferences and schools pulling their rights together. It doesn't sound like that's enough. And you remember that Cantwell and Schmidt bill? In there, it promised and guaranteed that if anybody did this, that they would make more money, although there would have to be a 14-member board independent of those schools. They're going to be in control of their media rights negotiations. So, does that mean that the Big 12 is going to get closer to the SEC in conference revenues? Does that mean the ACC is going to get closer to the Big Ten in revenues? Does it also mean that Conference USA is going to get closer to the ACC in revenues? Does that also mean that the Sun Belt is going to get closer in revenue to the SEC? Does that mean the MAC is going to get closer to revenue to the Big 12? Exactly what does all this mean? Some government subsidy program that would keep lifting conferences? If the Southeastern Conference strikes a new media deal, and we're going to talk about that later in the program, does that mean there's an automatic kick in? I don't even understand what any of this is. Other than you're not going to be able to get a mandatory SBA through. That's dead. It doesn't sound like the optional SBA is enough. The SCORE Act, we talked about how it had to thread the needle. It had to thread the needle to get it done. This ain't no threading the needle. This is not Of course the Big Ten was not on this call, or a couple of them. Of course no SEC presidents are on this call. What do you think the SEC presidents are doing right now? They're not on a call to make sure a bill gets passed in which doesn't benefit them at all. Like, the SEC presidents are working on something else, not this. To get the SCORE Act passed, that means the government basically has to run everything. Well, then the SCORE Act isn't getting passed. And if the SCORE Act is not getting passed, what's the next step, ladies and gentlemen? What's the next step? The reason why the SCORE Act, the reason why all these universities and all these conferences got together and tried to get the SCORE Act passed was to give the governing body some credibility in making their own rules, governing their own rules, enforcing their own rules, and it's just not going to happen. Not going to happen. So what's the option? The options are silos. The SEC presidents are not on that call because they're working on their silos. That right there is the death of the SCORE Act. The SCORE Act just died with those phone calls on Monday. That means they're not going to get it passed. The chances, it was never the chalk that it was going to pass, but now it's completely dead. To get the votes, that means you have to come up with some mechanism. And it's not just going to be about the ACC and the Big 12. It's going to be about the G6 conferences. And if you can get that extra money, if you can get that extra government money, go for it. But the Big 10 and the SEC are not going to, this just has no chance of passing. None. It's dead. It sounds like, Tom Debate, it sounds like an optional pooling of rights together is not enough to get this passed. It's not enough. They need the government to come in even more on this. And the SEC wants nothing to do with any of this. You can disagree with the Southeastern Conference. You can disagree with the Big Ten. Go for it. You can put in the comments. You can give me a phone call. But there is nothing in it for them on this. There's literally nothing in it for them. Jamie, the Bengals fan. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Jamie. Appreciate you coming on in. Mrs. Arkansas, Razorback. I totally expect the SEC to lead first and the Big Ten probably get some kind of scheduled alliance. I can't blame Jamie for saying that. Woo, pig. Look, again, we'll finally get into the SEC discussion here in a little bit. I have been sideswiped by this story here. Thank you, John Grove, and the other people that sent it to me. I have no idea. Now I'm sitting here And I'm sorry about the switch up. This is a live show. We have to deal with breaking news. This is breaking news. This is a monster breaking news. I don't know how to say it. I cannot find a reason why the SEC does not break away from the NCAA. I cannot find a reason why the SEC does not govern their own conference going forward. Nothing is working. We can't govern it. We cannot govern this thing. We can't govern the 138. We can't govern a 70 team. The SEC is going to be in some, they're going to be throwing some elbows and governing the 16 team conference, which is about to go to 18 or 20. And the Big Ten, they're going to be disagreeing with each other, but we can't do this on a grand scale anymore. It doesn't work. The courts do not give the NCAA any credibility. And I don't blame the courts for that. The NCAA, which, by the way, the NCAA is us. It's our schools. The mistakes, the sins of the past is all bundled up in this thing called the NCAA. It's just, you know what? Just give me a minute here to talk about the College Sports Commission. There was news earlier today, just before we came on live. The College Sports Commission is reminding schools of this rule and that rule and NIL Go and MMRs. And I don't even want to go in the deep weeds of that. But I'm seeing comments. And I see it on college football YouTube channels. And I love them all. God bless them. But the CSC, their role is not to figure out what the courts are going to let go, what the courts are going to agree with or not. The CSC goal is their goal is to trying to figure out, to determine what the House settlement is all about. The CSC is going by us, what we agreed with the House lawyers in a class action lawsuit. That's what the CSC is doing. They're us again. They're us. Now people are blaming the CSC for all the problems. It is us. We're the problem. My Gophers are the problem. Jamie's Razorbacks are the problem. NBM Oklahoma State Cowboys are the problem. We have not been able to figure out how to govern 138 schools and give a body the ability to govern us. We're the problem. I know I'm a big stickler on that, but we all like to put all the blame on the NCAA. Now we're doing it with the CSC. The CSC is trying to follow the rules that we agreed upon, us schools, with the House lawyers and the judge in the case, in the class action law case, in the 3 class action law cases that were all bundled together. That's what the CSC is. It's not an evil body. It's just trying to figure out what the heck we all agreed with. And we are disagreeing with what we agreed with. We are a mess. We're a complete mess. And the most powerful conference in the country, if you want to call it the whatever you want to call it, the SEC, which, by the way, is sitting on a gold mine, and they know they're sitting on a gold mine, and we're going to get to that here in a little bit. They're done. They're done. And why wouldn't they be done with all this? They're done with this. They're not going to agree with what they were not even in the phone call. Of course they're not going to be on this thing is dead. And because that thing is dead, another thing is going to live. And that is the SEC climbing up that silo mountain. They're almost at the peak. They're almost at the top of the mountain. And I'm not even going to pretend. I'm not going to pretend. I'll poke and a prod, but I'm not going to pretend on how all this is going to flush out. Because I don't have a clue. I do not know how extreme these silos are going to be. You know what? Let's skip, because of this big breaking news, let's just skip on over to the big story of the day. Again, when you know how it is. When we take on the phone calls later in the program, when you call in, the floor is yours. You can talk about anything you want to talk about. Super chat, when you put on the super chat, you can talk about anything you want to talk about. The comments, I pick and choose the comments that are kind of flowing with the story that we're going with today. But I've got other things to talk about. We've got other things to talk about, but let's just get to it. Since the SCORE Act is completely dead now, put a stake through the heart, because of the breaking news, let's just get to it. Let's just get to it. The SCC Cloak N Dagger. And what do I mean by this? Okay, let's get into it. The chatter behind the curtain has always been this, and the public statements by the national football reporters and others have always been this. Two different narratives talking about the SCC next expansion, the timing of the expansion. Every time over the last year, and I have brought it up over and over and over again, and I'm bringing up these names not to pick on them. I love all these guys. I love all these gals. I do. I think they do a great job, entertaining, very smart. Once in a while, I disagree with them. It's not a big deal. I'm a nobody. But again, what they're saying in public doesn't match what is being said in private. What they're saying in public, every one of them, and we brought it up over and over again, they keep saying the year 2030, 2030, 2030, 2030, 2030. And I keep saying, I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think it's going to be happening in 2030. I think it's going to be happening before 2030. Now, set aside that for a moment. Park that. Park it over here. Now, I'm going to talk about something that seems to be the opposite of that. But just please, just give me a little bit of time. Give me a little bit of time here. I'll try to explain. I have sat here and I've often said that when it comes to realignment, we go through the rules of realignment, right? Realignment never sleeps. Realignment starts with the biggest dominoes. Relationships are important in realignment. Another rule in realignment, we've talked about it over and over and over again, is when the conferences, when they're able to expand, they have more leverage during the media negotiations. That's when they have their biggest leverage. When they're in that exclusive media rights negotiations. The further out from the next media rights negotiations, the more leverage your current media partners have in realignment. So closer to the next media rights negotiations or during the media rights negotiations, your schools, your conference has the most leverage. Further out after those media rights negotiations have been completed and further away from your next one is the most leverage that your current media partners have in realignment. All right, everybody get that? Okay. And history is there's a lot of evidence to that. Just a lot of evidence to that. The last Big Ten expansion, when they were in those media rights negotiations, the conference had the most leverage that they were ever going to have. They were able to bring on USC and UCLA. And then when Washington and Oregon were candidates because of the Big 12 being able to poach the Pac-12 and Kevin Warren left office and everything kind of aligned with the Big Ten, still the media partners, Fox, they had pretty good leverage. Remember, Washington and Oregon only got 50 cents on the dollar. That's just one of many examples. Okay. So, that rule that we just talked about is the rule that in public the national reporters are clinging on to. Yeah, you hear them say it, right? The further we get along, the closer we get to these current media contracts running out, that's when the next media the next realignment is going to happen. And that's about 2030, because that's when the Big Ten's contract is up. They're going to renegotiate, and that's probably when the Big Ten expand. And then the SEC will probably do it around that time as well, because their current media contract goes to 2034, but they're not going to let the Big Ten go off on their own and expand and not respond. So 2030 is the year that the national reporters keep pretty much in consensus. They're all singing from the same song sheet. And because it has to do with the golden rule, one of the golden rules of realignment, the leverage goes to the conference during your next media rights negotiations. And if the SEC, if the Big Ten wants to expand, it is most likely they're going to be able to do it in 2030. Okay. So that's the rule. Hold on, everybody. Hold on. Give me a moment here. I'm getting inundated. Hold on, everybody. I appreciate your patience. Just give me a moment. Please give me a moment. Hold on. So, great. If it is 2030, why are we talking about it now? Because it's not 2030. That's why I've been talking about it. That's why. Okay. Remember a few days ago, Ross Dellinger. Let me take a step back. The 2030, the rule that I just went through, that's what they're saying in public. The chatter behind the curtain is completely different. Okay? Ross Dellinger a few days ago, and remember how I said it? Ross Dellinger slipped it in there. He slipped it in there in his report. Ross Dellinger was reporting about a bunch of stuff, but then he slipped it in there that the SEC is likely to have early negotiations with the ESPN on their next media rights. Ross Dellinger slipped it in there. He does that. That was the most important piece in an article. I don't even remember what the article was about. All I remember was that sentence. All right? All right. Now, today, let's go through an article of today. April 7th, Sports Business Journal with Ben Portnoy. With Michigan's win, Big Ten holds the cards to college sports future. And of course, this is like a love letter to the Big Ten. And Portnoy throws a couple of shots at Tony Petitti. Let's go through it, because there's one part of this article that SBJ, they slip it on in there. SCC cloak. SCC cloaking on the time. The cloak is starting to disappear. The SCC's cloak on the timing is starting to disappear. Portnoy, there's something cliche about March Madness. The allusions to magic, the trips to Disney World, one shining moment, and yet we consume every morsel each spring, enamored with the way it makes us feel. The joy of the comes that clipping the nets on the first Monday of April in a Cavernous football stadium involves in a bold proclamations and completion of a journey south of the Mason-Dixon. They tell you this just means more. In the Carolinas, it means greatness has been accomplished in Big Ten country. There are no quirky slogans dreamed up by corporate marketing wizards to explain what transpired on Monday and really over the past 9 months. Michigan's 69-63 dismissal of Connecticut for the program's fourth men's basketball national title wasn't about slogans or appeasing talk show callers. It simply served as the latest reminder. The Big Ten is roundhouse kicking its way to the top of college sports in the boardroom and on the court, and everyone out to take notice. Resources matter. You have to be honest about it, the Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti said, as confetti fluttered about inside Lucas Oil Stadium. But you still need great coaching, although that costs a pretty penny. You still need a commitment to winning and support at high levels, coming together and building and developing players. We've seen that across pretty much everything we play. There was a collective relief Monday evening in a city that embodies the ho-hum Midwestern roots of a conference that suddenly lords over college sports. Big Ten 25-26 academic year marks the first in history which a conference has seen 3 different member schools hoist the national titles in football, men's basketball, women's basketball. Michigan also becomes the first Big Ten team to win a men's basketball championship since Michigan State in 2000. The league has also seen 3 different schools win football national championships in as many years. That kind of winning brings cachet that the hard-charging Petitti will undoubtedly wield over the enterprise he so desperately tried to disrupt. The Big Ten has resources between the Big Ten Network and brand of schools where there's so many different teams that can win a championship now. Said former Michigan John Beilein, from the first row behind press row, you're going to have to beat good teams, but Michigan is going to be in the mix in every sport. Now, Petitti has become this college sports villain of the moment. He's the man who insisted the rest of the Power Four expand the college football playoff to 24 teams. His $2.4 billion private equity deal drew enough uproar from Michigan and USC regents to torpedo it. And yet, on an evening in which Michigan faithful rejoice is Petitti and those in the league office that ought to perhaps celebrate as fervently as any. PATC money shot of the evening on April 7th, 2026. The Big Ten's 7-year, $7 billion television deal spread across Fox, CBS, and NBC grants it the richest such agreement in college sports. The SEC sources suggested this week that the league is looking for ways to rejigger their notably undervalued agreement with ESPN worth $3 billion over 10 years. Despite largely outperforming the Big Ten in viewership. There's more to the article, but we're not going to go to the other parts of the article. We're going to stop right here. Ross Dellinger, Yahoo Sports have sources telling him that it is likely that the SEC is going to go into early renegotiations with ESPN. Sports Business Journal, which has all the sources when it comes to ESPN and Fox, and sources just suggested this week that the league is looking for ways to rejigger the notably undervalued agreement with ESPN. All right. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means the following. The Southeastern Conference wants to do an early renegotiation. They know their deal is greatly undervalued. Things have changed. They signed a 10-year agreement from 2024 to 2034. When ESPN and the SEC, when they signed that agreement, they had a pretty good idea that they were going to renegotiate before the 2034 season. But you've got big data. You've got different ways of measuring viewership. It is really enhancing more rural parts of the country. Their numbers are being captured more. The SEC value is way undervalued. And you might say, well, the SEC has control here, Greg. They don't really have to renegotiate with SEC. You're right, they don't. Not really, but yeah, they do. Because they don't want to lose the SEC. They don't, it's a give and take here. You saw what happened to CBS. They were not interested in early renegotiations with SEC, and the SEC basically told CBS a few years out, all right, we're going to go in a different direction then. CBS was not even part of the negotiations in the exclusive window negotiation period because the SEC had already done this. So the SEC numbers are so big, and their current value is it is so undervalued that the SEC is going to have to come to the table. When Ross Dellinger said it this week, when Sports Business Journal says it this week, when they both have sources telling them this week, that means there are people leaking, and it's not just the Southeastern Conference side. I've tried to explain this before. Nobody leaks better, nobody leaks more than media partners, media companies. But anyways, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole today. So what does all this mean then? Let's go back to the golden rule. When does a conference have the most leverage in exploring and executing expansion? When do they have the most leverage in those negotiations? When the negotiations of a new media contract is going on. That's when the conference, especially a conference like the Southeastern Conference, that's when it has the most leverage. So, if the Southeastern Conference in the next calendar year is going to be renegotiating with the ESPN, then this is the prime spot for them if they want to expand, and we believe they absolutely do for a whole lots of reasons. To expand the footprint, to expand the demographics of the battle for students, or the apocalypse of students, to get more ready to go for new markets of Europe and the Middle East. And of course, to stay with the Big Ten when it comes to opportunities, national advertisers, national sponsorships. The Periscope in Birmingham is always looking at Rosemont, and the Periscope in Rosemont is always looking at Birmingham. So this is the prime time for the SEC. Remember all the war gaming they've been doing? And they've been doing it. Remember all the positioning in the schools? This is not about the SEC having its best leverage with ESPN in the year 2030. It's about SEC having its best leverage when it comes to expansion in the year 2027, 2028. And I happen to believe, and I'm going to give you the peek around the corner right now. I happen to believe, I've always believed this, but because so the chatter behind the curtain has been consistently the SEC's not waiting to 2030. But the public statements from the reporters are, it's going to happen around 2030. But the Southeastern Conference has been cloaking their timing. But now the cloak is starting to disappear. Now the leaks are starting to happen. Keep an eye on SBJ. Anytime they report on media negotiations in any sport, you got it. They're going to have the sources. Back to the article. The league is looking for ways. They're not in the future going to be looking for ways. They're doing it right now. The Southeastern Conference is looking for ways to rejigger the notably undervalued agreement with ESPN. They're looking for ways to do it. I can give you a few options. on that. Do you know how they can rejigger? You know how they can find a way to to bring in more value for the conference, more value for those institutions like an Alabama, like a Georgia, like an LSU, like the top brands in the SEC that bring all this viewership in? You know how you bring in more? You know how you rejigger it? You know how you redo it? You do it like the Big Ten did it. Okay, I'm going to say something here, and I'm just speculating. This part I'm speculating, but you know, I think there is merit to it. But you know, this whole thing about the Big Ten when they expand, programs don't usually get the full freight right away. They have to sort of buy into it. You know how Rutgers in Maryland, they did not come in at full freight. Oregon and Washington did not come at full freight. USC did. And by the way, we reported that in real time in the spring of March 22 that they were going to come in full freight. One of the many reasons why people thought I was crazy, but it turned out to be completely accurate. But you know, this pro rata part of this contract between ESPN and SEC, this pro rata thing, where it says that if the SEC brings on schools into the conference, that ESPN will give them the full freight. It doesn't have to be in there. If ESPN is going to renegotiate with SEC, ESPN is going to be looking for something. They're going to be looking for something out of this. If the SEC wants to expand, to bring in a total, to create more value out of the whole conference and provide more content for ESPN and whatever that new media partner is going to be. We haven't even gone down that rabbit hole today, but you can bring in a North Carolina. You can bring in a Florida State. You can bring in a Clemson. But, you know, they don't have to come in at pro rata if you're renegotiating here. That's going to help ESPN out, and it's probably going to, a little bit of that extra money is probably going to go to your Alabamas, your Georgias, your LSU, your Tennessee, your Florida. And that's just one option. Remember, in this article, the SEC sources suggest this week, just like Ross Dellinger reported, that the league is looking for ways to rejigger the notably undervalued agreement with ESPN. Looking at options. And I'm just going to throw it out there. I think one option is, you grease the skids. The Southeastern Conference is not going to sit here. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and I'll show you this what I showed during the episode 482 earlier today. And this is just one calendar academic year. This is only one. But look at that. College football, Indiana, national champion. Michigan's men's basketball national champion. Penn State wrestling national champion. UCLA women's basketball national champion. Women's field hockey Northwestern national champion. Men's water polo UCLA national champion. Men's soccer Washington national champion. Women's hockey Wisconsin national champion. The number one team in the country, UCLA in baseball. And right now the metrics say it's a pretty big gap between number one and number two. Going into nationals this year, women's gymnastic, the chalk is UCLA. My beloved Minnesota Golden Gophers are in the 8-team nationals as well. The Frozen Four, Michigan and Wisconsin, two of the Frozen Four teams. You've got USC dominating track and field, indoor, outdoor. Now, that's just 1 year. But the SEC is not going to just lay down. And then what is happening off the court, off the field? The Big Ten is getting basically every ounce and juice of their media value, while the SEC is being well undervalued. So the SEC is not going to just lay down here. They're looking at ways to renegotiate with ESPN, which is going to provide a whole lot of benefits to the SEC. It's got to provide some benefits to ESPN. And one of those ways of doing that is to bring in a whole lot of value into the conference, but you don't have to spend 100 cents on the dollar for that. And then you could bring on a new media partner that you could possibly sub-license or just bring them on. There's different ways to do this that can benefit all the parties. But the Southeastern Conference knows this. This is one thing that is, the chatter behind the curtain is so loud on. So loud on this. The Southeastern Conference is going to expand their footprint, and they're going to try to accommodate themselves in this battle for students. In other words, they're targeting states that are close to the region, that they're not in, with that have a whole bunch of students in the right demographics, with the right purchasing power. That's where they want to go to. So the SEC cloak is starting to disappear. The timing of this, I think more and more people are going to catch on to this. Now, let me give you a scenario which I don't believe is going to happen. Okay? Let me get to a super chat. Second one of the day. I appreciate it. Carla Jenkins TV. $5 holler from Carla. Thank you, Carla. Thank you. I appreciate it so very much. The NFL now has a 10% ESPN equity stake. How would that affect SEC renegotiations? I really do not have an answer to that excellent question. Do not have an answer to that excellent question. But I'm gonna borrow that question. I'm gonna steal that question from you, Carla, and I'm gonna poke and prod on that one. That is that's interesting. I've never asked that question. I've never really ever asked that question. Because the NFL now has 10% of the equity stake of ESPN. Now, of course, the SEC is the biggest part of ESPN when it comes to their college portfolio, but it's a relatively small part of the entire ESPN portfolio, Disney. So I don't know how much. I don't know how much interest, I don't know how much leverage or interest the NFL would have on that. Interesting question. I do not have an answer, but I'm going to get you an answer, Carla. I will ask that question. That's the best I can do. Thank you for the $5 holler. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. But here is an interesting scenario. And then we're going to quickly go to the Notre Dame. We're going to go to the Notre Dame. I wonder what Notre Dame is thinking after today's. We're going to go to Notre Dame here in a moment. But here is a scenario. that I don't think is going to happen, but we got to bring it up. Okay? We have to bring it up. I really don't believe this is going to happen. But remember, we talked about one of the golden rules in realignment. During your meeting negotiations, that is when the conference has the most leverage in expanding. If you want to expand the conference, and some other items as well, not just about expansion. The further you are out from your renegotiations, the leverage is with your current media partners. It's been reported by Ross Dillinger in Sports Business Journal within the last 3 or 4 days that the SEC, Ross Dillinger says they're likely to renegotiate with ESPN, and SBJ calls it they're looking for ways to rejigger the renegotiation with ESPN. In this renegotiation, in this early renegotiation between ESPN and SEC, let's say we all wake up, we're doing a live show, John Grove sent us, Vox Quindaro sends us the breaking news, we have to report it. ESPN, the Southeastern Conference, has signed a new media contract. Greg Sankey, ESPN, they signed a new media contract, a 5-year deal worth $5 trillion, whatever it is, this massive amount. Our jaws dropped, they hit the floor, just like the last deal that they signed was massive. And there is no sign, and it happens May of 2027. We're just pretending here. We're just pretending. May 2027. Massive new deal. We come on live. And there is no hint, there is no reporting of any Southeastern Conference expansion. The Southeastern Conference signs the deal with ESPN May of 2027. Maybe they even add a media partner. Maybe they add Netflix. They overpay for like 8 games a season. Whatever. The SEC is rolling in cash and they do not expand the conference. If that happens, I don't think that's going to happen. But if that happens, that would indicate strongly that the SEC got paid so much money and all the other issues that they've been dealing with, student apocalypse, Middle East, Europe, new markets in the next 10 years, all these other issues, maybe those issues die down to the point where the Southeastern Conference decides they're not going to expand. If all that happened, then the Southeastern Conference has made a decision. We're not expanding for years. Because if they do not expand in this renegotiation period, it is extremely not likely at all that the Southeastern Conference would then go ahead and expand in 2029, 2030. So let me end this discussion before we go to the eyes are watching. Let me say this. If what we believe at PATC is happening or is about to happen, and we think we got this because the chatter has been heavy on this for a long time, and that is why we never believed the 2030 story of the SEC expansion. We've always said to you it's going to happen earlier than that because of the chatter, not because of the golden rule. We thought the golden rule was going to be busted, that the SEC would renegotiate with ESPN earlier, and now the leaks are happening. If all this is true, if the renegotiations are about to happen, if the renegotiations are about to happen, then this is the window. This is the window for Florida State. This is the window for Clemson. This is the window for North Carolina, for God's sakes. This is the window for a possible fourth team if the SEC does the big scoop. Possibly Virginia, although that has gotten a little bit tricky. In other words, this is go time. Go time is not 2030. It's not 2029. It's go time right here. If it happens the way that I believe, and for good reasons I believe it's playing out, if the earlier renegotiations happen, if it gets sped up, then look, you remember the Big 12? We talked about it. They leaped in front of the Pac-12. They got that deal signed. With ESPN and Fox, and they moved up ahead of the Pac-12. The Big 12 was not in their exclusive negotiation window. The Pac-12 was. But the Pac-12 was, I can't even remember the commissioner's name anymore. I never could pronounce it anyways. They blew it on the negotiations. The Big 12 moved up. They got the deal done, signed, sealed, and delivered on October 30, 2022. And then they were in position because during those renegotiations, the Big 12 and Brett Yormark made a deal with ESPN and Fox. We'll take that $30-some million per year per school. We'll take that deal. But in that deal, we have an agreement here on the pro rata, basically pro rata, for the further additions of those Pac-12 schools that we think we have a chance to get. All that was wrapped up in that negotiation. Brett Yormark, that's why I bristle at the fact that Brett Yormark has not done a wonderful job for the Big 12, because he has, even with all the mistakes. In that renegotiations, he set up, the grease was poured on the skids so you could slide into Utah, Colorado, Arizona State. And I think that's what's about to happen with the Southeastern Conference, especially now that they're probably going in their silo because of the because of the news that broke during this live show that the SCORE Act is basically dead. It's all coinciding together. So it's go time. I cannot promise you a rose garden, but it's go time. If the SEC, you think it's by accident that it's been leaked to Ross Dellinger this week and SBJ this week? That there's earnest on the SEC side to renegotiate their contract? I don't believe in those coincidences. I believe in Cloak and Dagger. And I believe the cloak is disappearing, so later on the dagger is going to emerge. Okay. Oh, and by the way, if you were a Big 12 school that were looking for the possibility of being a part of the next SEC expansion, none of this is the scenario that you wanted to play out. But we're not going to get too far deep into that. We've got a lot more to get to. The Irish eyes are smiling and the Irish eyes are watching. They're watching. They're looking at what the Big Ten has just accomplished. Again, this is just one calendar year academically and athletically from July 1st, 2025 all the way up to June 30th, 2026. We haven't gotten there yet. This is the accomplishments athletically from the Big Ten. all those national championships. Notre Dame has made it clear for anybody who's wanted to listen or read the interviews from Jack Swarbrick all the way back to 2012, when Notre Dame made the agreement with the ACC, all the way through 2022, 2023 Dan Patrick Show, multiple interviews, multiple questions, interviews, Jack Swarbrick, and lately Pete Bavacqua. There are three ways that Notre Dame, there are three different events, according to the two last athletic directors of Notre Dame, three different events that would cause Notre Dame to leave their football independence. Number one, if they ever were not given college football playoff access. Notre Dame is always going to get their college football playoff access. Unless the Southeastern Conference, when they do this breakaway from the NCAA and they're going their own silos, if this is an extreme silo, if the SEC says no one's going to follow our guidance, our rules, we're only going to play each other. If something extreme happens like that, okay, maybe Notre Dame won't not have that access to the playoffs to play SEC teams in a credible national football playoffs. But that's an extreme case. Every other scenario, of course, Notre Dame football independence is going to have playoff access. That's not going to be a problem. The second one of the three events that could alter Notre Dame's football independence, the second one is if Notre Dame if they can't quite get that network and the value of a network deal good enough to be able to compete at the highest levels in college football. Now, Notre Dame was able to secure a deal, a sliding scale deal, but a deal nonetheless with NBC, a partner that's been their partner for a long time. Notre Dame has that network deal. So for now, that isn't going to cause Notre Dame to jettison their football independence. The third event that could cause Notre Dame to leave football independence is the one that we have talked about the most the last couple of years. It's the one that worries Notre Dame the most. And that is Notre Dame wants their Olympic sports to be in a place, to be in a platform, to park their Olympic sports in a place where their Irish sponsored sport teams can compete at the highest levels of their respective sports and compete for national championships. If they cannot do it in the ACC, then they're not going to stay in the ACC. Their sponsored sports, other than men's hockey, they're not going to have them parked in the ACC. And that in itself might cause problems. They might have to jettison their football independence. Jack Swarbrick has talked about this over and over and over again. On episode 482, earlier today, I showed you an example. Go ahead and go watch the episode. Dan Patrick Show on, I think it was August 23rd, 2023. Jack Swarbrick went through the three things, and at the end he said, if we cannot compete at the highest level in national championships in the ACC, then that could affect our college football independence. Jack Swarbrick said this in 2014. He said it in 2019. He said it a lot in 2022. In interviews, in a question and answer period at Notre Dame with parents of student athletes, Jack Swarbrick answered these questions. He said, if we cannot compete in our sponsored sports for national championships, we're going to have to figure something else out. So the question is, Can Notre Dame Olympic sports compete at the highest levels to win a national championship in the current ACC? Now, we know that Duke can. ACC has not fallen so hard that nobody can. Of course, ACC schools can compete for national championships. But it's also reality to admit that the ACC has slipped in basketball. They have. The Big 12 has passed them by. The SEC has passed them by. You can start making the argument that the Big 10 is starting to probably go by them. You've seen what happened with North Carolina basketball. North Carolina basketball going to the 5th or 6th option on their coaching search. Maybe they got a great coach, the NBA coach Malone. But again, it wasn't their first target, second target, third target. That's how much the ACC has slipped. That's how much the incredible value of the North Carolina Tar Heel, Baby Blue, that great value, basketball value, they have slipped. Notre Dame is completely aware of all this. We have reported to you that the Notre Dame ACC relationship is cold. And have you noticed that other reporters have reported that Scott Dochterman has reported he made a bold prediction that Notre Dame would park their sports in the Big Ten, no more in the ACC. That was his bold prediction for 2026. Pete Sampson, a Notre Dame beat writer, basically in the same article with his bold prediction, said that Notre Dame would take their sponsor sports and be it in the Big Ten or the Big East, that it's not working anymore in the ACC the way that Notre Dame likes it. Have you noticed that Notre Dame, nobody, Father Jenkins, Father Flanagan, Father whoever, nobody's coming out there and saying that this is not true, we're solidly, everything's fine. No, complete silence. You don't think that Notre Dame, again, I'm not trying to bury the ACC. I'm trying to give you the peek around the corner. A lot of great institutions in the ACC. A lot of great sports is going on in the ACC. Look at Miami. They're completely loaded this year. My God, they're loaded. They're loaded. The Hurricanes, I think I might have them in the championship game. I mean, they can win it. Look, it's not all doom and gloom for the ACC, but from Notre Dame's perspective, and from North Carolina, but we're talking about Notre Dame now. From Notre Dame's perspective, it's a much harder hill to climb now than it was in 2014, 2016, 2018, 2020. It's a much steeper hill to climb. Notre Dame, of course, they know the difference now between the ACC network and the Big Ten network. Notre Dame knows. Look, the SEC and the Big Ten just did a scheduling agreement with volleyball. Notre Dame is seeing Big Ten hockey. They're already in Big Ten hockey, but they're seeing the emergence and the growing of Big Ten hockey, and the players that these schools are starting to grab because the Big Ten can pay more. The world has completely changed. It changed on the SEC. The SEC has completely dominated college football from A to Z. And it changed on them. Are we to think that the world hasn't changed on Notre Dame? Of course it has. And someday it might change on the Big Ten. And if it does, I will report that. But the Irish eyes are watching. They're watching this. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of change that is in the air. We are on the precipice here. I still believe that nothing is imminent. I have said that on every live show. But one of these live shows, one day, I'm going to say, I'm not going to be able to say that line anymore. Instead of me saying nothing is imminent, nothing is signed, sealed, and delivered, I'm going to be talking about a hot bubble of action that is happening somewhere. And then things are going to get really interesting. And it's not going to it's going to happen before 2030. Or at least that is the goal for the SEC and the Big Ten. Plus you have the prisoner dilemma stuff going on. There's a reason why Tim Smith, the athletic director of Maryland, said we're going to be adding two. There's a reason why Mark Coyle gave strong indications. He said within the next several days or within the next couple of years, there'll be Big Ten expansion. Anyway, that is the Irish Eyes Are Smiling. That is the SEC Cloak N Dagger. And now we'll go to your phone calls. You can talk about anything you like in your phone calls and the super chats. I'll be getting to them all. Here we go. Let's open up the phone lines. 763-260-1333. And again, we have breaking news. Breaking news. Breaking news. The SCORE Act is dead, basically. Maria Cantwell and Senator Schmidt had discussions with a lot of presidents, none of them in the SEC, talking about the one pathway to get the SCORE Act passed is to make sure that the disparities among the conferences are smashed together by hook or by crook, by government subsidies, whatever it takes. Yeah, I think the SCORE Act is completely dead. We also have, before we get a phone call here, if anybody wants to call in, and maybe nobody doesn't, we also have this, Joe Flint. Fox is near a deal to acquire the rights to the 2026 Big Ten Championship game from NBC for between $45 million and $55 million. NBC had subleased the game from Fox and is now essentially selling it back. So they're playing hot potato with the Big Ten Championship game. And of course, my question is that going to be the last Big Ten Championship game ever? Is that why nobody wants it? Is that it? Is this the last one? Is this the last one? Wyoming, this was reported yesterday, I believe. Wyoming is set to unveil a 5-year, $4.5 million sponsorship deal with the energy infrastructure company Tallgrass. Athletic director Tom Berman tells SBJ. The deal includes a jersey patch for the football and men's and women's basketball and will help more fully fund the school's rev share. Wyoming Cowboys. All right, phone lines are open. Phone lines are open. Solanol, I think ESPN leaving Florida State out, and historically Florida State choosing academic ACC over football SEC, plus who wants to be in South Carolina. That's a shot. That is a shot. Jamie, it has seriously changed the outlook of future of college athletics. The whole silo situation. The whole silo situation.
From
Rick?
Rick is on the line. The floor is yours. Thanks for calling. How are you doing today, sir?
Doing good. Doing well, Greg. You?
Very good. Very good. We got 183 people in here. I appreciate all of you. If you want, if you can, subscribe and ring that notification bell. Smash the like button. Go ahead, Rick. What is on your mind today? Holy smokes.
Well, it appears the SEC is having curtains measured for their silo.
I would think so. At this point, yes.
And picking carpet colors
Um,
for the various levels of the silo that the teams will be on.
Now, I just want to say this. People get upset with me when I keep saying this, but I might be wrong, Rick. I might be completely wrong. I do not think that anything is done, signed, sealed, and delivered on what exactly is going to happen. I'm going to have a prediction segment on April 9th. That's 2 days ago. That's a prediction, not a report. But maybe we're further down the line than I even think we are. I don't know. But go ahead, sir.
Well, I tend to, I think I really want to agree with you time-wise about where they are as far as 27 goes. That sounds right. And the negotiations for TV with ESPN and the SEC sound about right. Everything seems to line up. The failure of the SCORE Act necessitates having to take care of themselves. Everything does line up.
Yeah, it's starting to, the dots are connecting, aren't they, Rick?
They are, and I know a lot of people don't want it to happen, and I understand it. I'm not sure I want it to happen, but it doesn't really matter. It's not like they're taking a survey of what we want. They're all doing what's in their best interest, and it seems inevitable. Well, that's the word that really comes to mind is, it's inevitable. When it occurs, why not speed it up? If you can lock in contracts and money and scheduling agreements and expansions, the expansion is the thing that probably is the biggest question mark, I think, of all. Who's going where and when? And how will the tower of dominoes or pickup sticks or whatever they're using going to tumble over? Will it be Notre Dame making the leap that snaps the ACC? Will it be UNC? It doesn't have to be either. It could be Miami or somebody else going where they want. I just will forever not understand why the Big Ten won't make the first move. I don't know why they feel compelled to have to let the SEC make the first move. Because
we do have them sneaking close to that center of the stage. If you're looking at the Holy Smokes Theater,
I understand.
Yeah.
But I don't think they'll do it without locking up a UNC or a Notre Dame. That they've got to have that. They've got to have one or the other to make the first move. What do you think of that?
Yeah.
No.
Yes. I mean, go ahead, Matt, Rick. It's April 7th. Go ahead and make I know it's literally impossible. I'm going to do it 2 days from now. But go ahead. Who, if you had to put your money on the table, who do you think is the first? It's not going to be just one school, I don't believe. But what are the first tandem of schools that are gonna file the notice of withdrawal to the ACC?
Okay, I'm giving it one of three choices. One is UNC. Well, no, I'm going to eliminate them. I'm going to eliminate them.
All right.
I just have to do some mental math. I think it's going to be either UNC or Notre Dame or tag team of Miami and Miami's part. I'll leave it at Miami then. I'll leave it at those three.
Okay.
Notre Dame, I think, will wait. UNC will only do it if they have to. They have to be forced to do it. They're kind of like Notre Dame. I think they're not going to do it unless they're forced to. I'll say Miami.
Okay.
I'll say Miami.
Well, you might be right. I mean, there is Miami. First of all, is fully aligned, and they don't have anybody. There's advantages for Miami to be the first one.
And I think it would be the Big Ten.
Yeah.
And I think it would be Miami and somebody, Miami and X. I just don't know who the X is. I don't know if it's Miami and Georgia Tech. I don't know if it's Miami and FSU. FSU, I just really believe they want the SEC. Even though the SEC doesn't want them. I think somehow Florida State's going to wind up in the SEC. But I want a partner for Miami, but I don't think it's Duke.
Yeah.
Miami and North Carolina would be sweet. Now that would just really, but that would just be a kick in the guts for the SEC, I think. If Miami and UNC went to the Big Ten first to break it, that would absolutely a blow to the solar plexus, as Greg Flugar says, for the SEC.
Yeah.
That would just awful. Just be awful.
Yeah.
So I kind of think I'm a believer that UNC will, or the SEC will concede the Wolfpack and let them tag along as a partner.
That could be.
But yeah, I'll go out on a limb with Miami, either alone or with somebody with X.
Got it.
All right, thanks.
You got it, buddy. Thank you for the call, Rick. We got a $2 super chat, $2 collar from Christopher Huda. Big Ten has 18 teams, 2 with half shares. They can't go first.
Call from
Movie Time Blues.
To accept, press 1.
Movie Time Blues, are you there?
Yes.
I appreciate the phone call. Can you hold on for a moment? I gotta get caught up with a few items here.
Okay.
I appreciate it, sir. Christopher Hooter, Big Ten has 18 teams. 2 of them half a share. They can't go first. I don't think that would completely dismiss them being able to go first. I do think you bring up a good point. Whatever the Big Ten does, if they do it before the next meeting negotiations, they're gonna have to do something for Oregon and Washington. I don't think you can keep them at half shares. If you're gonna bring somebody else in at half shares, I think you have to do something for Oregon and Washington. That's my thinking. But Christopher Hooter, I think you bring up a good point. I think there's a handful of reasons why I think the SEC is most likely going to go first. I've always thought that. So I kind of agree with you, Christopher Hooter. Thank you for the $2 holler. Very much appreciate it. Movie Time Blues, just wait for, we got another super chat here. We've got it from North Carolina. Preston from Greensboro, North Carolina. And then we got to get to the Minnesota Gophers news here. I just don't see Clemson and Florida State being covered for North Carolina. Virginia or Duke certain would. I can't wait for your Thursday show. They're not covered for UNC. Well, they would be when it comes to the media partners. But political cover would have to probably come from a Virginia, Duke, or Georgia Tech. That is where North Carolina political coverage comes from. And I don't think the SEC is going to be taking Georgia Tech. So, but I do think there is some. I do think it might. I think North Carolina, again, it's about having the right blend, right? The right blend. And I think a Florida State and Clemson would help North Carolina in that. That's my thoughts. Thank you for the $10 holler. Preston from North Carolina. And, of course, North Carolina, I think, is the right blend for the teams that I just mentioned, the schools. You know what? I don't know what is going on here. I don't know what is going on. But we've got some breaking news for my beloved Golden Gophers. Holy smokes. Hold on. I don't know what's going on. The Golden Gophers, yesterday they got a commitment from the great tight end in South Dakota, the number one player in South Dakota, 4-star tight end. And now the Gophers just received a commitment from Brooks Bacco, the number one player in North Dakota and the 115th player overall in the 2027 class. Bacco is going to be ranked as a top 5 commitment for Minnesota in the 247 composite era. Yeah, I don't know what the heck's going on. All I can say is I don't know what's going on. We do know that there's some corporations getting involved in Minnesota's NIL. This year, supposedly they're spending like $25 million. I don't know what's going on. Something is going on in Minnesota. We're landing players that we just never get, even up here in the upper Midwest. I mean, guys who are mid 4 stars. I don't know what is going on. Movie Time Blues, the floor is yours. Let it rip, sir. Hello. Movie Time Blues. We have lost Movie Time Blues. I hope there is nothing wrong with the phones. Movie Time Blues, I apologize if you were cut off. I don't think you were. Somebody call in, please. Somebody call in. I have no idea what's going on with the Gophers. Why are they getting these?
From
Movie Time Blues.
Movie Time Blues, thanks for calling again. I appreciate it. Hopefully I didn't cut you off. But go ahead, sir.
No. Oh, yes. Okay. This is what I was thinking. What is the center of gravity between the University of North Carolina and the University of Virginia? Because it's been the conventional wisdom that the center of gravity was in UNC.
Yes.
But since they've been indecisive, could it be possible that Virginia is trying to lobby UNC behind the scenes as to what direction they will go as a pair?
I am sure that both schools are lobbying each other and talking with each other all the time. They've always have. And I don't know, and some of it is North Carolina indecisiveness because they've got different factions. Some of it is they could not make a move anyways because the SEC could not take them in, nor could the Big Ten, not with the SCORE Act and everything that's been happening. But I do agree with you, there is some indecisiveness because of the different factions. And then North Carolina has the Board of Governors to deal with. I think North Carolina and Virginia are talking all the time. I think what has happened, the difference between now and 6 months ago, is that the University of Virginia is not all that enamored to go to the SEC conference. Their leadership is not. Their leadership is in line with their faculty, and it is lined in the majority of their boosters. So they have an alignment against the SEC right now. It's not like the last few years at the University of Virginia. The Board of Visitors has completely changed, and they're not really enamored with the SEC. Again, it doesn't completely eliminate the possibility of the Cavaliers becoming an SEC program along with the Tar Heels, but it's a more trickier situation. Go ahead, Movie Time Blues.
And also, what's the relationship between North Carolina and Notre Dame? They have did a similar mindset when it comes to the athletic and academic integrity.
Yes. Yeah. If the day should happen that North Carolina leads the ACC to the Southeastern Conference, that is going to put a big hole into the ACC Olympic. It's going to be put a quite effect on Notre Dame.
But this is why we cannot eliminate the possibility of a Big Ten admission, because we fans we have an idea what college sports should look like, but the ones who really make the decisions are the academics and the presidents. Yeah. So they have their own priorities, and we cannot. As you've said before, you cannot dismiss any possibility at this point because there's a push and a pull between every various factions within college sports.
Mm-hmm.
And also, remember you did an episode where there were when a couple of factions within the Big Ten were looking at different candidates, but both agree on about 3 programs. Those were the 3 programs we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So you never know. Like the Big Ten could really influence the direction of the ACC programs.
Mm-hmm.
And that hasn't changed much.
Yeah.
So
you are correct, sir.
So, this is far from over.
It's far from. Yeah, no, I don't think anything's done. So I agree with you, sir. I agree.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
All right, buddy. Movie Time Blues, thanks for the call, my man. I appreciate it, sir. Great
All
call,
right.
legendary caller, Movie Time Blues. PATC.
From
Chris Kenny.
Chris Kenny, thanks for calling. I appreciate it. Haven't heard from you in a while. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
It's good to speak with you, Greg. Actually, the last time we spoke, I remember because it was right before the Northwestern Minnesota game at Wrigley Field, and we both thought our respective teams would lose. Only one of us could be right, and I have to say I'm happy it was you.
You were right.
Yeah.
And I was
you were
wrong
right.
because
I
I'm
was
the
wrong.
re-elected mayor of Loserville City. Go ahead, sir.
No, but I know you weren't. You Minnesota lost, but you said Minnesota would lose. So really, if you look, if you take your half glass empty approach, I think you're actually you were the winner there. So.
And Tony, tough Tony, he's going to yell at me, but Gopher fans are going to yell at me. The Gophers were the worst 8-5 team in the country. No question about it. No question about it. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I want to talk about that in a way because I think it sort of influences my thinking on where the Big Ten is going and how and why it's behaved the way it has. As long as I've been calling in on this show, I have thought, as much as I don't like it and do not want to see it, I do think that what we're seeing today is sort of what, and I'm not unique in this, a lot of people saw 2 years ago, that the Big Ten and the SEC, contrary to all the contraction chicken littles and the misery love company crowd in the other leagues that want to see the Big Ten and the SEC get smaller, they're going to get bigger. They're going to get bigger with schools that don't fit the profile that perhaps other schools fit in prior rounds of realignment. And in one form or fashion, those two leagues are going to break away from the current regime. And, what that looks like still is up in the air. I'm not convinced, actually, that anyone needs to leave the NCAA in order to have conference-only governance. I think that assumes the role the NCAA plays today is the role that it's going to play forever. And that's not necessarily true. I think that the Big Ten and the SEC have a lot of leverage, and if they want to set their own governance structure but remain within the NCAA for championship purposes to keep, the integrity of March Madness in place moving forward, which I agree with, the articles you read the other day, I think benefits them, even, under the current system that they otherwise don't like. I do think that they're going to have a lot of opportunity to get their way, similar to how they behaved when the college football playoff was reorganized. So I don't think it's a given that they're going to leave the NCAA just because they set up their own organizational structure. But, who knows? They might. And they might say, you have to, we still want to play in the NCAA tournament, but if you won't let us, then we'll start our own tournament. And some number of our schools will automatically qualify. Maybe it's all of them. Maybe it's probably not, because I think that would ruin the value of the regular season. But maybe it's every Big Ten and SEC school that's 500 or better, and they get an auto bid into a new 64-team tournament. And to avoid antitrust problems, the rest is an invitational, and will include teams from the other leagues, whatever form or composition they've got going forward. But there will still be UConn and St. John's, and there'll still be Texas Tech and Arizona, and maybe an Ivy League team, and maybe a Miami of Ohio one year. Like, who knows? Like, they could run their own tournament, and or the Players Era or some other organization like it sets up its own tournament, even if the Big Ten and SEC don't own it. I think, one way or another, I think they've got a heck of a lot of leverage. They could stay in the NCAA if they want, but one way or the other, they're going to break off in some form from what the current status quo, because it's obviously not working. And I think the tweets that you shared today underscore that. What I think is important, though, that I've sort of observed, you said is I think that the schools the Big Ten is going to be looking to add are just not the type of schools that people assume they would add. You hear a lot of people saying the Big Ten needs football brands, the Big Ten needs football brands. And I agree that to some extent that's obviously true. And Notre Dame and Miami, maybe Florida State, who knows, they accomplished that goal. But what I really think the Big Ten needs to focus on is improving the quality at the bottom of the league. I think the Big Ten is obviously, there's no debating it now. The Big Ten is the best football conference in America at the top. Like the results on the field for 3 years in a row prove that. I think, you could make a case that the middle of the Big Ten is better than the middle of the SEC. I think the bowl season this past year gives you a lot of strength in that argument. Iowa beat Vanderbilt. Tennessee lost to Illinois. I don't, say what you will about Minnesota and Northwestern, but they won their bowl games. Nebraska, had a decent year, although they didn't play well against Utah. But I don't think they're any worse than the middle of the SEC. I think they're at most they're even. Where the SEC is undeniably still better, and you could say this is not worth a whole lot, but I actually think it's worth quite a bit. The SEC is unquestionably better at the bottom of the league. If you look by any of those metrics, FP Plus or whatever other rankings Greg Sankey wants, put in a PowerPoint at their spring meetings, the SEC is better. And Arkansas was a 4-8 team, but they were a very competitive 4-8 team. And you might say that's because the top of the league isn't what it used to be, and that's probably true to some degree. But the bottom's gotten better. Like Kentucky is better. Mississippi State, they got embarrassed by Wake Forest in their bowl game, but they played close games from time to time. So did Carolina. And those close games, whether it's the product of dilution or improvement or both, resulted in better ratings. And I don't believe that the Big Ten doesn't have enough good football brands. I don't believe that the Big Ten has to go, searching and stretching to add Clemson or some other school that doesn't fit the profile because it doesn't have enough strength in football. I don't think that's true at all. I think the bottom of the Big Ten is the problem. People are not going to watch Ohio State murder Rutgers. They're going to watch that for 20 minutes and switch the channel. And if Alabama, South Carolina happens to be a more competitive game, that's the game they're going to watch. So what the Big Ten needs to do, I think, is really push the bottom of the membership. Purdue and Rutgers and Maryland, UCLA. Wisconsin showed a little bit of life at the end, but they stunk last year. Michigan State stinks. They need to push programs like that to continue to invest in the product. And I think gradually that's happening. UCLA has done quite a lot in just, one off season. So I think that's really where the emphasis needs to be. And as a result, when you're talking about expansion, you're going to recruit or want to recruit new members like Notre Dame and Miami, maybe Florida State. What those three schools have in common is they have the resources to compete at the highest level already. Now, they're worried that they will fall back, and that's why they need to get to the highest ground. And if there is a breakaway of some form, there are other reasons just beyond the financial to be part of it. Texas had plenty of money in the Big 12, but there are perception and exposure issues that they need to get ahead of, and that's why they're in the SEC. I think the other top brands in the ACC are going to, operate the same way. But if you want to fill out the rest of the league, I think the Big Ten is going to look to schools that fit its profile already, and that's going to include schools, as you've said before, that are wealthy and in wealthy markets. And so that's why I remain very bullish on Duke. I remain bullish on Stanford. I think Cal actually is a very attractive option, much more so, I think, than any other program in the Big 12. Kansas, I know you've got them in the theater, but they're going to the state legislature with their hat in their hand, asking for money to support the athletic program in this new era. We don't need more schools like that in the Big Ten. I know Minnesota's had to raise fees, and Wisconsin got some money from its legislature. I do not think if the objective is to raise the bottom of the league, that you want schools that have any semblance of financial distress. I don't think it's good enough that Utah is being told to build a war chest. I think the league needs schools that have a war chest. Whatever amount of money that Utah can put together is not going to come close to the amount of money that Stanford already has. Cal is already assembling, that Duke already has, that Miami, obviously, and Notre Dame already have. That's where I think the emphasis on growth needs to be. And so if the Big Ten goes second, they're going to have, I think, a real advantage in accomplishing that goal. Because if the SEC goes first, as you've said, they may need to take on schools that are big flagship state schools for political cover. I don't know. Is that North Carolina State? Is that Virginia Tech? I mean, there's so many variables. It's, I think, impossible to predict. But I don't think the Big Ten is going to have to be in that same category where they need to take Kansas and Colorado, or I don't know, pick another school that sort of fits the big state flagship school. Like, I don't think that they're going to have to worry about that because the precedent will be set. If the SEC goes first, it breaks off, it creates its own silo to one, however wide or comprehensive that is. The Big Ten will just say, hey, we're just keeping up. Like, this has already been established. We're not breaking any norms. The SEC has broken the norms, and we're just responding to the new world. And this current world, I think, is already working very, very well for the Big Ten. The results, as you put in your tweet, are undeniable. They're winning at every possible sport you can think of, just about. Northwestern's doing its part in field hockey. We've got a top 5 lacrosse team along with Michigan and Maryland. So the status quo, I think, works for the Big Ten, and even this new world, I think, will help the Big Ten continue to achieve the goals that it wants, which is to improve the product overall. And if we do that with schools that have the resources and the willingness to play by the new rules, which even some SEC schools, it seems to me, are afraid or a little reluctant to. I think they'll come around. But I think that they don't like the new way of business because the old way benefited them so much. Big Ten will have none of those constraints and none of those worries. And I think over time, these ratings, hysteria and hand-wringing and chest-beating that you see, depending on who you talk to, I think is going to take care of itself. Because if the bottom of the league improves, the ratings are going to improve. We've already seen it in Olympic sports, which I think are relatively easy to improve because the investment is so much lower. And it's only a matter of time before the rest of the football product catches up and makes the kinds of gains that we've seen, maybe not to the degree that Indiana did. Not everybody can win the national championship every year. Only one program can. But you're going to start to see that improvement. And I would much rather make a bet on schools that have the pocketbook and the appetite to do it than quibble around with, a state like Kansas or, Iowa or Colorado, or pick one. Arizona, is a toss-up, who knows. But I just think that the ACC programs fit the Big Ten mold much better than the Big 12 programs. And as we move toward this larger league and a possible breakaway, that's sort of what I've always thought is going to, be the next membership drive in the Big Ten. And I haven't seen anything so far that's, disabusing me of that belief. So it's just my 2 cents. It's been a long time, so I appreciate you indulging me and letting me share some things I've been thinking about, and look forward to the rest of the show.
You got it. I appreciate it, Chris Kenny. Beautiful call once again. Legendary caller. Thank you, my man.
All right.
Call again,
hey,
sir.
Christ is risen.
Yes, absolutely. You got it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Beautiful call. Absolutely beautiful call. I'll just say it. I'm going to say it kind of crudely. I'm not going to say it as eloquent as Chris Kenny said, but yeah, I mean, and I've said this before, the Purdue administrator who BTM talks with, the Purdue administrator basically says what Chris Kenny says. He says, rich schools and rich locations have the advantage in the next Big Ten expansion. Anyways, I just want to thank everybody for joining us here. We've been on the air for 2 hours and 14 minutes. I do want to thank Heartbreak 25 Carla Jenkins, Christopher Hooter, and Preston from North Carolina. 4 super chats. I appreciate that. To help us keep the lights on and grow the channel. Thank you for the wonderful phone calls, the people in the chat room. We had breaking news during this big live show. We had to cover that. We went on a little bit longer than I thought we were going to, but we're going to call it right now. But again, keep your head on a swivel. It may have to come on later tonight. We'll definitely be on tomorrow. You got to subscribe. You got to ring the notification bell. You got to keep an eye on us because we can come on live at any time. Whenever the breaking news is, whenever I get information, we talk football, we talk on the field, off the field, everything in college football, because we love everything in college football. Very humbled that we had a peak number of 182 people that joined us today on a lazy Tuesday, April 7th. I appreciate all of you. Again, before you leave, smash the like button if you've liked our content, share the video, subscribe, get yourself notified. Until next time, from all of us at College Football's Peek Around the Corner, to all of you, please y'all take great care of each other. Thank you so very much. And God, family,